Alrighty, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the LHCC Grant Writing Workshop. This morning, our speaker will be Dr. Randy Kaufman. Dr. Randy Kaufman has over 25 years of experience working at the intersection of health systems and community behavioral health, including grant writing, project development, implementation, quality improvement, and monitoring and evaluation. She works on eliminating health inequities with a focus on cancer prevention and early detection. At LSU Health Sciences Center School of Public Health, she has served as an assistant professor, the program manager of the Louisiana Breast and Cervical Health Program, the director of Screen Up, and the assistant director of the Louisiana Prevention and Control Programs. She has written and edited successful grant proposals from CDC and NIH, as well as from foundations including Komen and Skoll. Currently, she's working as a public health consultant and a life coach. I give you Dr. Randy Kaufman.
Good morning, everyone. I see we have kind of a small group today, so I think we can do live introductions, which would be great. I know we have about 4 or 5 folks who are here to watch the webinar today. You want to introduce yourselves? Adrian, do you want to start? No. Charlotte?
Hi, yes, I'm Charlotte Crochet from Chris's Auctioner Foundation in Lake Charles, Louisiana. And I am the philanthropy program manager and responsible for grants.
Wonderful, welcome.
Thank you.
We have Patricia. Demetria. No. Latanyet.
Good morning. I'm Latanya Thompson, the Regional Social Worker with the Office of Public Health, Region 9.
Well, wonderful. Jessica? If anyone else, when you come, just put in the chats your name, what area you're from, and what organization. And we'll do it that way. Now I'm going to get us started. Here we are. So welcome everyone. Today we're going to talk about grant writing. And more specifically, the Louisiana Healthy Coalition's Community Coalition's Community Grant Program. We're going to tell you a little bit more about ourselves as well as the program announcement that's going to be coming out. We're going to go over some key concepts to keep in mind when you're developing your project and writing your grants. We're going to talk a little bit about how to develop a project in line with the community grant program, some grant writing tips and do's and don'ts, and then we're going to have a Q&A. And then we're going to talk a little about office hours. We're going to have some ongoing technical assistance after this webinar. So we're going to start with a poll. Nikisha is going to help me out with this.
Okay, does everyone see the poll?
I see it.
Okay.
We're going to try to get an idea of your experience and your confidence around grant writing.
Randy, Dr. Kaufman, while they're doing the poll, if you want to readjust your slides to presenter, because we can see the presenter view and not the presentation view. Yeah.
Let's see. How's that?
Yes.
Is that better?
Yeah.
I have 2 screens going and they are showing different things. So
yeah.
looks like we've got some very experienced folks here, and I hope that you still get something out of this presentation. But at the end, you'll also have a chance to let me know what else you would like to see. So most people, well, we have a big split. We have quite a few people who have 0 to 3 grant writing experience, and then we have someone who actually has written over 7. Where most people have actually successfully written a grant application, and most people are fairly confident that they can do it. That's great. All right. So we can end the poll. I think I can close it out now. All right. So our next slide doesn't want to go. There it is. So here's an overview of the presentation. Oh, is that the wrong way, huh? Here we go. We're going to talk a little about our Healthy Communities Coalitions. So the coalition's really a network of many organizations, including a team of statewide leaders, regional partners, local partners. We all work together to implement policy systems and environmental change, what we call PSE, which is the ongoing theme of this grant opportunity and this discussion today. The goal of the coalition and the regional coalitions is to combat obesity and tobacco use, with the ultimate goal of reducing the burden of chronic disease in Louisiana, which means less suffering and less death. LHCC was founded jointly by the Louisiana Cancer Prevention and Control Programs, what we call LCP, which is at the LSU's HSC School of Public Health. The Campaign for Tobacco-Free Living, TFL, which is housed at the Louisiana Public Health Institute, and the Louisiana Department of Health, which has a large number of chronic disease projects. So what do? We know that our state residents experience a lot of obesity. We have high obesity rates and tobacco use rates, and that these are some of the biggest causes of death and chronic disease. So we bring together communities across the state to fight tobacco use and obesity through healthy policies and improvements to our built environment. We provide a network that helps train, unite, support, and leverage communities' work. We do this through our statewide leadership, like Nikisha and Jamie, and a connection to the regional Louisiana Healthy Community Coalitions. We provide communication support. We provide these community grants. And I think a lot of you probably were at our annual summit a couple weeks ago. So this is going to be a little introduction to our community grant program. So since 2019, we funded 56 projects to fight obesity and tobacco use. The individual project funding ranges from $1,000 to $3,000, and the approach is shifting poor health outcomes by using policy systems and environmental change strategies. We have some examples here. In Lake Charles, they installed bike lanes, which make it easier for people to safely bike for exercise, to commute to work, to school, to the grocery store. We always support complete street ordinances, which mean that whenever you work on streets, that you have to add safe possibilities for bikers and walkers. Community gardens and school gardens have been done quite a few times with this grant program. Here's a photo from a school garden in Bogalusa. We also support tobacco-free efforts like they've done in Grant Parish, whether it's a townwide ordinance, or whether it's encouraging casinos or bars to adopt their own policies to become smoke-free. So this year, we're going to award approximately 6 to 10 grants, still from $1,000 to $3,000. We think of this as kind of seed money for projects or money to improve projects or add to projects. There are 2 funding areas, the built environment and smoke-free environment. Built environments are usually obesity-related projects that increase community access to healthier built environments with a focus on health equity and the social determinants of health, meaning that we're doing projects that change the environment in such a way that it makes it easier for people to make the healthy choice and do the healthy thing. Smoke-free environment projects include smoke-free municipalities, increasing social capital for smoke-free environments, reducing smoking in youth and or adults. So that's cessation or prevention. Organizations may apply for both areas. You can actually put in 2 grant applications, one for the built environment and one for the smoke-free environment. But if you do want to apply for both, you have to do the 2 applications, not just the one. Who's eligible? Nonprofits are eligible. Government entities, towns, cities, parish governments, universities and schools. Other kinds of community-based organizations are also allowed to apply or encouraged to apply. Community health centers, including FQHCs, churches. We also encourage all the organizations to apply to partner with the regional Louisiana Healthy Communities Coalition and other coalitions and resources in their area. Individuals and businesses cannot apply, but they can partner with organizations that can apply. There are some restrictions. This money can't be used for ongoing activities because it is seed money. We have an eye on sustainability of the project. And then there are some things you can't spend on because these funds actually come from CDC, from our Louisiana, from the LSU's Comprehensive Cancer Control program that's funded by CDC. So you can't use the fund for food, salaries, or lobbying activities, or office supplies like computers, chairs, etc. I mean, if you need small supplies to do your work, like you need pens because you're going to have people signing up for something, like that's fine. It also says no lobbying activities, but that doesn't mean that you can't go out and educate your leaders and elected officials. There's a difference between lobbying and educating. So you are more than welcome to go out and provide your local and our statewide officials with your expertise. So each organization can only make 1 application for each program areas. So you can apply to each program area, but you can only apply to that program area 1 time. So that's a max of 2 applications. The work that's funded by the mini grant must be completed within our state, and you cannot use funds to discriminate on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, age, national origin, veteran status, sexual orientation, gender identity, disability, or any other basis of discrimination prohibited by law. And most organizations will have a statement on this, a policy in place. If you need help with a policy like that, just let us know. So here are important dates. So in the next month, in June, we will actually be posting and sending out the request for applications, which will outline in greater detail what the community grant program is and how to apply. In July 3rd to August 4th, the applications will be open and we'll be taking your applications. It'll be very easy to apply to as far as like the technical aspect of it. We're going to have a grant information center session just on the grant itself, the grant request for applications and requirements on July 13th at 11 a.m. And in September, by the end of September, we will have notified all the awardees and we'll be distributing all the funds. Now, by May 31st, the projects will have to be completed. The grant writing technical assistance that I mentioned earlier is going to be provided via Zoom. It's going to be on Mondays from 2 to 3 or by appointments. And you can reach out to me. That's my email if you want a one-on-one with me. And that's from May 31st to June 29th. So it'll be every week. So here are some really important concepts that you need to keep in mind when you're developing your project. The first one is health equity. So I think a lot of you probably know what health equity is. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. We'll be talking a little about why it's so important. And health equity means that everyone has fair and just opportunity to be as healthy as possible. That means making sure all populations have access to whatever they need, and this requires removing obstacles to health. This means making sure disadvantaged groups or priority populations have access to things that encourage optimal health. And why is it important? Well, let's take a look at the drawing. So we would say equality. This is a way that it's often described equity. So the difference between equity and equality. So equality is when everybody gets the same thing. Like you can see everyone on the top part of the drawing has the same bike, but they can't even ride that bike, right? Some people are too short, some people are too tall, somebody is actually in a wheelchair. And then the second one, the bottom part of the drawing is equity, where everybody has a bike that works for them, right? So that everybody can take advantage of the bike. And that's the idea, that it's not one size fits all. Everybody gets what they need in order to be healthy. So this is an example of health inequity, right? This is from our tumor registry. They have a wonderful visualization tool, which I encourage you to look at. They have all sorts of great information on cancer survival, incidence, disparities, all kinds of things. But if you look at this, Louisiana is the top purple line, and the United States is the bottom line. And you can see that while both the state and the nation are improving, the gap between the state and the nation isn't improving. So while we're having better outcomes, we're not having we're not doing better when it comes to health equity. We still have a big gap, right? Because both the state and the nation are decreasing at the same rates. And this is an example of what happens when health equity gets worse. So the state's purple, the state's saying the same, and the country is getting better, it's going down. So the gap is just getting bigger. So we don't want that either. This is what we want. We want the state and the national lines to come closer together, and that would be reducing health inequity. Because otherwise, like if you go back to this one, you're improving health overall, but you're not improving the inequity. Okay, so we're going to talk a little about the social determinants of health. So we know that about 20% of health outcomes can be attributed to clinical care, which can be shocking to people because people associate clinical care with health. But in reality, the places we live, the work we do, the income that we have, the education we have, what our communities look like, all those things have a bigger influence on our health outcomes than just clinical care does. So this is the place that we're working at for this grant opportunity and for LHCC in general. It's the neighborhood and the built environment. So we are going to be making changes to the neighborhood and built environment that go on throughout time and can help sustain change. Here's some neighborhood factors to keep in mind when you're thinking about how to make change. The walkability of the neighborhood, the more people walk, that's great for health too. The safety is incredibly important because we know that people who experience or witness violence or crime are much less likely to have good health outcomes, obviously. And if your community is not safe, people aren't going to walk, people aren't going to play in the park, people aren't going to ride their bikes. Schools, the quality and accessibility of schools, having access to healthy food, having access to great recreation, so you can move your body and be physically fit, having healthcare resources that you can access that are good and appropriate for the community, having less tobacco availability and advertising and exposure to smoke, having good quality housing, having employment opportunities, and having access to leaders and policymakers so you can make even more improvements. We're going to talk a little about social capital. And you as community coalitions, you have social capital, right? You have connections, you have relationships and social networks that allow you to get things done, from the close ties that help you with day-to-day stuff like getting volunteers, even like finding a babysitter or whatever you need. But also like a little longer ties. Sometimes they're weaker, but they stretch longer and they give you access to gatekeepers, to institutions, to leaders and policymakers, which is very valuable for creating change, letting the people who can control change, who can support change, letting them know what your community needs and working with them to make sure not only that your community gets what it needs, but that it gets it in a way that works for your community. So like the difference between equity and equality and equity. So we're going to build, we want you to build and use your social capital to advance health equity and make policy systems and environmental change. So when you're working on your project, I want you to think, how can I grow my social capital? How can I use my social capital? Who else can I involve? How can I make it grow? Okay, and so this is the big E, policy systems and environmental change, PSE. We talk about it, you know, on every other slide, right? It's a way to make ongoing, long-term, and sustainable change. So on the right, we have a framework for public health action. And it starts at the base of a pyramid with what can create a larger impact. And on the top, it talks about what has a smaller impact. On the very top is counseling and education. And I want y'all to really focus in on that, because a lot of times we have this idea that if we educate people, that'll do it, right? All we need is more education. And while people need great education, they do, just telling people what to do and them knowing what to do doesn't necessarily lead to them changing their behavior. For instance, we all know, like everybody here knows, that they're supposed to floss their teeth every single day. And everybody they know probably knows that they need to floss their teeth every single day. But do we? No, we don't. I don't, I have to admit. But what can we do to change the context, our big purple block in the pyramid? What can we do to change the context to make it easier for individuals to default to making a healthy decision, to change their environment? Maybe we could put up a little note on the mirror that says, don't forget to floss. Maybe we can make sure that there's floss right there on the right next to the toothbrush, so that you can't forget about it, right? What if we make a policy that every day at breakfast we have to ask each other, did you floss today? And we embedded it in the community. So these are the kinds of things that we do, the community at the population level, that go beyond education. And education can be part of a project sometimes, but it has to go beyond. It has to be something sustainable. It has to be something where it makes it easy for someone to make the right healthy decision. And we know that these kind of policy systems and environmental changes are very effective at reducing health disparities and improving our health. Here's some examples for policy systems and environment. Policy, which means changing the rules, regulations, and processes at institutional or government level that dictate behavior. For example, if we have a smoke-free ordinance and it's harder to smoke in public and to find a place to smoke, we know that that will decrease smoking rates. And we know that other people won't be as subject to secondhand smoke. Systems level is changing how an organization or institution where we work, go to school, live, or play functions. For instance, in a community hospital, they know that some of their patients have a hard time eating well when they're in treatment, say for cancer. So what if we embed a food pantry at the hospital and we check in with our patients and say, do you have everything you need at home to cook healthy meals? And if they say no, then we bring them to the food pantry. Environment, changing the places we live or go to every day to make it easier to be healthy. For example, some people live in neighborhoods where they don't have access to vegetables. So what if we got the farmers market in the parish to come to our neighborhood and hold a farmers market every week? So this is the first focus of the grant, the built environment, and that's a focus on obesity. So to do this, we want you to focus on increasing access to healthy foods, and also make it safer and easier for people to be physically active, to move around. For example, we could do a food bank. We could help you buy equipment to support you know, to get the seed money to get your food bank going. But just as a note, we couldn't help you purchase the food because that would be an ongoing cost. So you would have to find a source of donations or funds to buy the food for ongoing, for sustainability. There's another one, a farmer's market. We could help you provide seed money to get people going, to increase their ability to provide produce, to make more produce. But we couldn't fund like matching funds for the purchase of food. You know, some farmers market will double your SNAP benefits so that you can buy more food, but we can't do that because that's an ongoing cost and it's food. The second focus area is smoke-free environments. So that makes it easier for people to quit smoking, create smoke-free places, and prevent people from starting smoking in the first place. And we ask that every grantee organization have a tobacco-free policy for their proposed project site and their organization. And if you don't have one, we will just help you with that after we get the grant, or if you need help now, that's great too. Just reach out. Here's some examples. We could fund partnering with a local library to bring existing smoking cessation resources. But we couldn't partner, you know, like bring a program that exists somewhere else and get it into the library, or you help them make their own. But we couldn't fund the purchase of nicotine patches because we can't pay for that beyond the term of the grant. Another example, working with bars to voluntarily become smoke-free. But we couldn't fund, say, financial incentives for them to do it, because that's also just like cost money that's ongoing as we keep going with the project. Now we're going to talk a little bit about how to develop your project. So start with the basic, right? Don't be too wedded to an idea. Like sometimes we start and we say, I'm going to do this, but maybe dial it back a little and think about what is really needed and who do you want to help and what do you want to happen? What do you want the result to be? And then when you pick a project, or even before you pick a project, ask yourself, how will I know that this project is a success, right? You have to be able to figure that out. And if you can't, your project probably needs tweaking. And of course, we call whether or not, you know, a project is a success, as it's called evaluation. But just thinking of it in the simple term of how will I know that this project is a success is a really good starting point. You don't need a lot of detail about how you just need to know that you know what the outcome is and there'll be some way to measure it. We are going to ask you to demonstrate the need for your project. And for that, we're going to ask you to look up the adult obesity or smoking rate for your area. And it's fairly simple to do on county health rankings. We have I have a couple links here. It's quite easy to use. If you need any help or you want to look for information elsewhere, please engage me in office hours. I'd be really happy to help. And one of the great things about county health rankings is that they have really nice maps like I have here, and you can see how you compare to your neighboring parishes. It's very important that your project is evidence-based. And by that, we mean that it's based on a strategy, an activity, an intervention that has been tried before and it's shown some success. And so, not that we don't want you to be innovative. We want you to balance innovation for your area with what we know works, which means tailoring your strategies so that they're right for your community. And that's the beauty of a community grant and community coalitions, is that they have a good idea of what works in your community, what would be acceptable to the folks in your community, that kind of thing. Also keep in mind that we're focusing on PSE, policy systems and environmental change, which is more powerful than education. We're creating environments and systems that make it easier for people to be healthy. Okay, so build on your organization, community, or partners' work that has been shown to work. So build on what you know. Build on your past successes. Whether the success is in educating your government officials, whether it is creating a community garden and pulling in volunteers, whatever your strength is and your partner's strength is, work from there. If you need some inspiration, here are some resources that you can look at to see what kind of interventions have been done before. And like I said, I'm really happy to talk through with you on whatever ideas you have. Now we're going to talk a little bit about grant writing itself. And y'all can feel, we have a very small group today. I should have said this at the beginning. So just unmute yourself and ask a question if you have any. I know some of you have experience with grant writing. Feel free to chime in about grant writing. Okay, so the number one thing you want to do, it's kind of similar to the project development, is to set yourself up to succeed, to work from your strengths, right? Choose a project outcome that's important to you and your organization, right? It's got to be something you feel a bit passionate about. That will really help. Something you believe in. Clearly define your project and who it will impact, right? So, we talked about your parish rates for obesity and smoking. Sometimes you might want to look for information that's even more specific, whether it's like, for instance, I've worked a lot in colorectal cancer prevention and early detection, and we know that African-American men have absolutely far and above the worst incidence, rates of getting cancer, colorectal cancer, and dying from colorectal cancer. So you might think like, oh, what can I do specifically for this group of people? Your group the people you might target could even be smaller than just like general community. It depends what you want to impact. And I can help you I can help you if you need help looking up more sort of drill down data on who's affected by what you're working on. Anticipate your obstacles and plan for them. You will always have them. You know that some things will be contingent upon the input or work of your partners or of a elected official, somebody like that. So you want to plan for that. Have a plan B, or think about how you're going to do a strategy in a way that will anticipate the obstacle and maybe help you avoid it. And think through specifically how this project will lessen a health inequity, will improve health outcomes, and will grow your social capital. Make sure you have all the people and resources you need to ensure success, whether it's volunteers or money or seeds, or partners. Make sure you have them so that you can succeed. Work from your strengths. I talked a little about this before. Think about what you're good at and work from there. When you look for partners, look for ones that share goals, right? That, some of the goals might, like say you want to work on something in parks. Your goal might be to make people move more or to bike more. You might find partners who are just interested in recreation. Like maybe they're just interested in baseball leagues or something like related enough that it would dovetail with what you want to do, and work together. And that can be great because you can not only get expertise and support, sometimes there's funding you'll get. Sometimes there's non-monetary resources you'll get. Definitely think about your Louisiana Healthy Communities Coalition, but think about other organizations. Think about universities and schools and voluntary associations, social clubs, all kinds of things. And very important, make sure that there's enough time and funding to complete your project. Okay, here's my top rules for grant writing. Number one, read the request for applications very carefully. Read the whole thing and then underline and highlight what seems important. Like if you were reading ours, you would say like, oh, the PSE. The PSE is important. Look at this. It keeps coming up all over and over again, right? So read the front, the back, the middle, read the whole thing. It'll tell you what you need to know. Follow the instructions. You know, like it's not, like, that expression like, what's the best way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time. So your instructions are your bites, right? You're just going to follow them, especially on our application, which is going to be a series of questions. So it's much easier. It's quite easy to follow, we're hoping, but follow those instructions, do exactly what they say to do. And then go back later when you're finished and double check. Pay attention to how it's scored. Sometimes an application will explicitly say how it's scored. It'll say you get 40 points for organizational capacity, 30 points for project description, or something like that. And when you see something like that, you say to yourself, all right, organizational capacity is the most important thing. Let me make sure I do a really good job on this. Make sure that I get all the important points in about who our people are and what our successes are and what our strengths are. Something like that. For us, it's going to be kind of obvious too. Obviously, we care about PSE. We care about feasibility. It's all right in there. But pay attention to how it's scored and make sure to focus on getting everything that's scored, getting information on everything that's scored into your application, as well as focusing more on the things that have higher value. Make it easy for the reviewer to find what they're looking for. We're making it easy for you and for us because we are putting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and asking certain questions. But organization is your friend when you're writing a grant application. Headings and subheadings are your friend when you're writing a grant application. Just make it really easy for the viewer to find what they're looking for, because if they miss it, you might not get scored properly on it. And also your application will be easy to read and the reviewer will more likely read it and get what you're saying easier. 5 is use simple, straightforward language. Make sure all the items in the budget are allowed and they're directly related to the project. Super, super important. Some grants will allow you to negotiate after they might choose you. Some grantors might choose you and allow you to negotiate after the fact about the budget and the project. Some won't. So do your best. Okay. Also, this is super duper important. Sustainability. So that's one thing we love about PSE is that it's sustainable. You change the environment, and for the near long term, that change remains. You put in a bike lane, and you've got a bike lane for a really long time until the streets start to crack and the lines start to wear away. You have a bike lane, and even when you put in a bike lane, you can keep working on your bike lane and make it even better. You can make sure that there is some way that it's separated from traffic to make it even safer. But one of the main things for PSE is that it's super sustainable. So the question to ask yourself is, will this project go on after my funding from LHCC is over? Right? Will I find other funding? Will I need funding? Will it just be standing on its own merit? Will another organization take it over and turn it into one of the regular things they do? Like say you start a farmer's market and then it gets absorbed by a larger entity that does farmers markets all over the place, something like that. Or maybe your university partner's student group takes it over or something like that. Or you don't need any more help. Your volunteers that you've had for so long are going to take it over and do fine. But really important. For example, like if you're proposing adding money to make streets safer so people could walk or exercise, Make sure there's a mechanism in place to keep the lights on and working. And if the project requires human power and funding to go on, identify where they'll come from. Here's some writing tips. One is to use active voice. Active voice is short, it's shorter, it's more to the point, it's easier to read. It's more like, instead of saying passive voice, like she got bit by the dog, you say the dog bit her. Short to the point, right? And short is often really important, not only for readability, but because a lot of times for a grant application, there'll be a limit, there'll be a page limit or a word limit. And the more direct and to the point you are, the fewer words you will take up, the fewer space you'll take up. Avoid jargon, which I know might be rich coming from me as a public health person who has endless acronyms and abbreviations and names for theories and, evidence, EBI, evidence-based intervention. Like, we have a lot of jargon. But sometimes the people who review your applications, they are not necessarily like as immersed in what you're doing, the kind of work you do as you are. So you want to avoid jargon, or at least explain really well. Same goes for acronyms and abbreviations. Like if you're going to use PSE, make sure PSE is written out, policy, systems, and environment, like change. Make sure it's written out the first time before you put a little PSE in there. Same for names of organizations. Don't assume everybody knows what, say, ACS, American Cancer Society is. We might all know, but the reviewer might not know. Plus, it's just good form. Cite sources for your data and other important information. Keep focused on what's being asked. Make sure you answer what's being asked, and don't add too much that is not necessarily needed or relevant. You can add if it's important, but don't go off too far. Focus on what's being asked and keeping it short and to the point. Identify your strengths. Like when you talk about your organizational capacity, don't be shy about your accomplishments, your abilities or capacities. Like if you know that your group is amazing at creating a really active volunteer network, and that's going to be part of your project, talk about it. Talk about your successes in the past. If you've accessed health leadership, like in city government before, to get something done, mention it. That's how we know who you are. That's how we know what your capacity is, and that's how we know what makes your organization special and right for this kind of work. And my favorite, even when I was a professor, I was always sending someone to the Purdue Online Writing Lab. It's called the Purdue OWL. And it's such a good source of writing help. They have everything you would need, from, like, you can take little quizzes to figure out how you do with certain kinds of punctuation. And then you can take little mini lessons on it and take a little quiz again. You can just, if you're confused, like how to use a semicolon, which I have to look up like once a year. You could look up how to use a semicolon, and it will really improve your writing. Because good writing, I talked about active voice, being brief, avoiding jargon, but writing well, like having the right punctuation, the right spelling, organization, like within paragraphs, like these things just make it so much easier for the grant reviewer to review your grant application. And anything that makes it easier for your reviewer to review your grant application is a great thing. The other thing I always recommend to people is that you read whatever you wrote aloud. Read it out loud, and you will hear if something sounds off. So that's another good tip. For the budget, right? We're also making the budget fairly simple, but be sure that you only include expenses that are allowed by the funder. If you aren't sure, just ask the funder. Ask me at office hours. Shoot me an email. That's fine too. If you just have a simple question, you can just shoot me an email. Make sure every expense is related to the grant, and be able to explain why you include each expense. So like if you're doing a community garden and you're asking for, gosh, I can't even think of something. So you're asking for a movie projector or something, like that wouldn't make any sense. unless you were going to show movies in your garden. Okay, I take it back. But you all know what I'm saying. Like, you wouldn't be doing a garden and ask for like pipettes or like lab equipment or something, right? Follow the minimum and maximum award limits. In this case, it's 1,000 to 3,000, and we're asking you to adhere to that. Please don't go above it. There are times for other grants when you can ask for more. I mean, nobody really ever asks for less that I'm aware of, but you can ask for more sometimes if you get a feeling like that it's going to be a little flexible. But in this case, it's very firm, 1,000 to 3,000. So do adhere to the limits. Make sure you include the business people at your organization when you develop the budget. Every organization will have its own sort of internal rules, like small internal rules about how you categorize things or what you can and can't spend on, or even how you purchase. Like sometimes purchasing in larger organizations can take a really long time. So if you're going to be buying some supplies for your project, you want to know that you can buy them and get them in the right amount of time. And it's just good. I know some organizations, your business people won't let a grant out the door until they approve it. But if you're not in one of those, and talk to your accountant or whoever you have in your coalition. I mean, in general, if your partner is providing additional resources or funding for the project, which is what we call in kind, that can make your application stronger. So if you know that you're going to have a partner that is going to give you an evaluation person to help you or something, you know, you can mention that, because that makes your application stronger. If you have a store that's going to donate supplies for your project, you know, mention that. That will make your application stronger. So that's the in-kind. So this application, it's a small application, $1,000 to $3,000. You don't require in-kind, but that doesn't mean we don't think in-kind is great and will make your project better. Okay, and so this is super important to be clear in general. Why did you choose this project? Why is it important to your organization? How will it lessen the health inequity? How will I use it? How will it use or build social capital? How does it relate to the social determinants of health? How is it PSE? Will the project go on after the funding is over? What people and resources do you have to ensure that you succeed? What partners are in place to help you succeed? That includes your local LHCC and other organizations. And how do you know you will succeed? Okay, so I made a couple of checklists. You know, the slides and the presentation are both going to be on the LHCC website. So you can download them, and the slides will have the active links for the links that I have in the presentation. But I made a couple checklists. It's going to sound redundant at this point, but at the same time, I think I've learned this just from teaching, that if you say something a few times, people have a better chance of remembering it. So part of my redundance. So here's your project checklist. Is the project evidence-based? Does the project bring something new to the community? Do we have the partners we need to make it a success? Is it in sync with LHCC values and mission? Does it involve a specific community with a demonstrated need? Is it PSE? How will it help improve health outcomes? How will it reduce a health inequity? How will it address the social determinants of health? How will it use increased social capital? Will it be able to continue when the grant funding is over? Will it make a positive impact on the environment? Okay, and so here's the application checklist, like just the overall. I want you to think about this. When you think you're done with it, you think you're done with your application, do we have the organizational capacity to work in the time allotted? Is the project plan, including the timeline, achievable? Is my application complete? Did we answer all the questions? Did we provide required documents and attachments? Does the budget reflect the work we are proposing? Are all items in the budget allowed? Is it well organized so it's easy to find all the requested information? Is the language straightforward and easy to read? Okay. So here again, these are my technical assistance office hours and my email. You can email me with questions or set up a special time for you if the Mondays don't work. It's so Monday, May 31st to June 29th. Those are Mondays at 2 p.m. via Zoom. And I can help with anything, like whether you need help with a project or grant writing, finding information, you name it, I will help you. And I will point you in the direction of where to find the information you need. Do you all have any questions? Just put them in the chat box. Actually, you can even unmute yourself. There aren't that many of us. And feel free to ask. Okay, I'll give it another 15 seconds. And then we'll go. All right. It does not want to move. There we go. Okay, now we're going to do a post poll. Nikisha,
Is it showing?
I don't see. Oh, yeah,
Yes, it's showing.
I see it. Great. I was looking on the wrong screen. All right. I'm loving people are feeling more confident. That's the goal. I think that might be everyone, right? Up 5. I look forward to reading your suggestions on what this had more of. Appreciate that input. Okay, so I'm going to end the poll. And then here's the results. All right. So this is the end. This is the end of our presentation. Does not want to advance. I don't know why. Here's our last slide. So if you want to learn more about Louisiana Healthy Community Coalitions, we're at healthylouisiana.org. You can follow us on Facebook, on YouTube. There's the email. There's our co-chair. Jamie is our tobacco-free co-chair, and Nikisha is our LCP co-chair. You contact them at any time. And I think you all probably know about this already because you found us and our grant process. So, but the healthylouisiana.org is going to have a lot of information on this community grant process too. So does anybody have any final questions or comments? If not, I would just want to thank you all for participating, and I look forward to meeting you and talking with you during office hours. So bring me whatever questions you have. I think it's going to be really interesting and fun. And, you know, anything that makes grant writing feel more, because grant writing can feel kind of solitary and alone, but anything that makes it more collaborative, I think will make it a little more fun and interesting, and hopefully better outcome. So thank you all, and enjoy the rest of your days, and I will see you soon.